All right, everyone. We are live. Welcome to the Yissilmissil Productions channel. My name is Steven Yissel, and today we will be reading from The Bermuda Triangle by Charles Berlitz. And in fact, I just read the entire first chapter and it didn't go live. So I'm not sure what happened with that. So we will be reading it for the first time live. Here I have an image from Encyclopedia Britannica to accompany us while we read. Man. So I'm going to read the inside cover and the back, and then I will read some of the notes in the beginning, and then we will read chapter 1. The Bermuda Triangle by Charles Berlitz. You may have heard of it as the Bermuda Triangle, or the Hoodoo Sea, or the Graveyard of the Atlantic. It remains one of the most perplexing phenomena in nature. An area of the western Atlantic where planes and ships with many within sight of land seem to pass into another dimension. In this absorbing book, Charles Berlitz reviews many of the bizarre and continuing disappearances connected with the Bermuda Triangle and proposes intriguing theories of the strange forces that may be at work there. Are the many UFOs that have been spotted in the area hijacking aircraft and taking samples of our civilization with them to other galaxies? Are electromagnetic aberrations from power sources of ancient and highly advanced civilizations causing space-time warps that transport planes and ships into other worlds? Are the losses somehow tied in with the lost continent of Atlantis? A squadron of 5 Navy planes, together with a rescue plane, disappears while on a routine training mission. A ship is found abandoned on the high seas with no trace of passengers or crew. A submerged ship rises from its grave below the sea. These unexplained disappearances and appearances are not scenarios for a science fiction movie, but recorded events of one of the great unsolved mysteries of our time. The Bermuda Triangle, that area of the western Atlantic off the southeastern coast of the United States, where over 100 planes and ships and 1,000 people have literally vanished into thin air. Here is the story of some of the most famous, believe it or not, happenings of this planet and the non-earthly forces that may very well be the cause of them. So just for reference, everybody, this book was published in 1974, so there will be some dated references in here. I have read through chapter 1, and I'm going to be reading it through here live today. And, it brings up some very interesting points. This is somewhat related to Coral Castle, I believe, in terms of electromagnetic frequencies and just the energy that our land has. And, it's just something. It's a good enough bridge to get into this topic of the Bermuda Triangle with unexplained mysteries. And we will be going even further into the woo after we complete this book. Because I do have other books on other human encounters. I'll say that much. I actually have plenty of books on different encounters all over the U.S. too, specifically. So, yeah, I guess we'll get started here. To the sea and its mysteries, whose solution may tell us more about ourselves. The Bermuda Triangle. Chapter 1. A Mystery of the Air and Sea. And before we officially start, if you haven't liked the video yet, please do. Please share it around if you enjoy it. I appreciate you guys being here. I'll be making this a weekly installment. So we'll be getting through this book. We'll be talking about things. If you have questions, let me know in the chat. I can see the chat clearly here. So we're going through this together. And as we come across pictures, photographs, drawings in this book, I will show you on the screen here. There's some really interesting stuff, especially there's a sighting of a sea serpent in Massachusetts that this chapter 1 covers. So we'll get into it right now. There is a section of the western Atlantic off the southeast coast of the United States, forming what has been termed a triangle, extending from Bermuda in the north to southern Florida, and then east to a point through the Bahamas past Puerto Rico to about 40 degrees west longitude, and then back again to Bermuda. This area occupies a disturbing and almost unbelievable place in the world's catalog of unexplained mysteries. This is usually referred to as the Bermuda Triangle, where more than 100 planes and ships have literally vanished into thin air, most of them since 1945, and where more than 1,000 lives have been lost in the past 26 years, without a single body or even a piece of wreckage from the vanishing planes or ships having been found. Disappearances continue to occur with apparently increasing frequency, in spite of the fact that the seaways and airways are today more traveled. Searches are more thorough and records are more carefully kept. Many of the planes concerned have vanished while in normal radio contact with their base or terminal destination until the very moment of their disappearance, while others have radioed the most extraordinary messages, implying that they could not get their instruments to function, that their compasses were spinning, that the sky had turned yellow and hazy on a clear day, and that the ocean, which was calm nearby, quote, didn't look right, end quote, without further clarification of what was wrong. One group of 5 planes, a flight of Navy TBM Avengers on a mission from the Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station on December 5th, 1945, were the object along with the Martian mariner sent to rescue them, and which also disappeared, of one of the most intensive ground-sea rescue operations ever conducted, although no life rafts, oil slicks, or wreckage was ever located. Other aircraft, including passenger planes, have vanished while receiving landing instructions, almost as if, as has been mentioned in Naval Board of Inquiry procedures, they had flown through a hole in the sky. Large and small boats have disappeared without leaving wreckage, as if they and their crews had been snatched into another dimension. Large ships, such as the Marine Sulphur Queen, a 425-foot-long freighter, and the USS Cyclops, 19,000 tons with 309 people aboard, have simply vanished, while other ships and boats have been found drifting within the triangle, sometimes with an animal survivor, such as a dog or canary, who could give no indication of what had happened, although in one case a talking parrot vanished along with the crew. Unexplained disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle have continued to the present day, and no plane or ship is reported as overdue and finally classed as search discontinued by the 7th Coast Guard without the expressed or unexpressed comment or feeling among the public or the searchers that there is some connection with the past and present phenomenon of the Bermuda Triangle. There seems to be a growing public awareness that something is very wrong with this area. Recent numerous reports from planes and boats which have had incredible experiences within the triangle and survived are contributing toward a new folklore of the sea, although the cause of the unexplained menace to planes and ships within this area is as mysterious as ever. The most varied and imaginative explanations have been offered and seriously considered to account for the continuing disappearances and assumed, because no bodies have been recovered, fatalities. These explanations include sudden tidal waves caused by earthquakes, fireballs which explode the planes, attacks by sea monsters, a time-space warp leading to another dimension, electromagnetic or gravitational vortices which cause planes to crash and ships to lose themselves at sea, capture and kidnapping by flying or submarine UFOs manned by entities from surviving cultures of antiquity, outer space, or the future, looking for specimens of currently existing Earth inhabitants. One of the most striking suggestions was actually predicted by Edgar Cayce, the quote, sleeping prophet, a psychic and healer who died in 1944. Cayce predicted, decades before the possibility of laser beams was suspected, that the ancient Atlanteans used crystals as a power source, specifically located in the Bimini area, and presumably subsequently sunk in the tongue of the ocean off the Andros in the Bahamas, where many of the disappearances have taken place. In this concept, a maverick power source sunk a mile deep to the west of Andros would still be exerting its occasional pull on the compasses and electronic equipment of today's ships and planes. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with Edgar Cayce, this is one book that I recommend, and I may even be reading this on the channel, but this was featured in the background of the film They Live, starring actor and pro wrestler Roddy Piper. I consider They Live my number one movie, and that is after much consideration. But Edgar Cayce is a very interesting person, and we'll probably be covering him on this channel later on. So, let's continue. In any case, the explanation or solution to the mystery seems connected with the sea. Itself the last and greatest mystery still confronting the inhabitants of the earth. For although we stand on the threshold of space, somewhat wistfully contemplating the cosmos while believing that the world, now so thoroughly explored, has not more mystery for us, it is nevertheless true that about 3/5 of the world's area, the abysmal depths of the sea, are about as clearly or even less known to us as the craters of the moon. We have, of course, long mapped the general contours of the sea bottom, first through mechanical soundings and more recently by sonar and exploration by submarine and bathysphere, plus deep-sea camera probes charted its surface and undersea currents, and are presently prospecting for evidence of oil on the continental shelves, and soon perhaps at even greater depths. Cold War activity and increasing reliance on submarine fleets, despite the danger to submarine activity experienced by the French Navy in the Mediterranean and to the United States Navy in the Atlantic, will certainly contribute considerably, if the material is made public, to our knowledge of the sea bottom. Nevertheless, the deepest parts of the ocean may still reserve considerable surprises for us. The abysmal plain and the adjoining canyons and the depths may contain unexpected fauna. The, quote, extinct, unquote, coelacanth, and that's spelled Coelacanth, a supposedly prehistoric fish with residual limbs, was discovered to be very much alive and well in the Indian Ocean in 1938. This four-legged bluefish flourished about 60 million years ago. And again, I'm not going to be agreeing with a lot, like everything in this book. I don't think that the dating goes back that far. Okay, I'll just say that much. Its last fossilized specimen before the live one was found had been dated at 18 million years BC. Detailed accounts from the reliable observers, many of whom had nothing to gain and much to lose in making a, quote, sea serpent, end quote, report, have sketched or described sea creatures with which resemble very much in structure the Pliocene, Monosaurus, or Ichthyosaurus, and that's spelled Ichthyosaurus, apparently still alive and well in the abysmal deep. On several occasions, these creatures have been observed by hundreds of witnesses as they approached beaches and harbors situated at points varying from Tasmania to Massachusetts. The Loch Ness Monster, affectionately called Nessie by the local Scots, and regularly, although indistinctly photographed, may be a smaller version of these giant fish lizards, as their Greek name, Ichthyosaurus, is translated. And I'm going to be mispronouncing some of these words because I haven't read them or seen them before, so just bear with me here, please. I know I can recite and read this pretty well, but there's some words that trip me up. I'm human. What are you going to do? Anton Brun, a Danish oceanographer, once observed a 6-foot eel-like tadpole brought up by a trawler, and also its larval form, which, if it grew to adult size and proportion, would be 72 feet long. Although no actual specimen of the giant squid has been secured, there are several indications that they may be fully as large as some of the fabled sea serpents, and in fact actually may be the sea serpents seen by so many observers. The size of these giant squids can be calculated by occasional skeletal remains that have been recovered, and also by disc marks on the backs of whales where the suction marks of the squid's tentacles, a result of their titanic struggles in the depths, have taken away the pigment from the whale's hides while leaving the outline. Although we are constantly learning more about life in the ocean depths, most of our observations and recovery of specimens have been haphazard, as if explorers from outer space, to draw an analogy, had dropped nets from their spacecraft in various parts of the Earth and pulled up whatever they chanced to find. So next we have a drawing, and it says a copy of the contemporaneous drawing of the Gloucester sea serpent, one of the best corroborated among the many sea serpent sightings recorded through the centuries. It was reported as being seen by so many people off Cape Ann, Massachusetts, in August 1917 that it evoked an investigation from the Boston Society of Naturalists. Representatives of the society reportedly came within 139 yards of the monster, estimated it at 90 feet long, and clocked its swimming speed at 30 miles per hour. Shortly after the visit of the naturalists, it vanished from the area. So there's first-hand sightings from people who put their names in these historical records here, and this is a drawing of what they witnessed. A giant sea serpent. And this is in Massachusetts in August of 1917, which is 6-7 years prior to Ed Leeds-Gollnisch building his coral castle in Florida. Okay. So now, even though the sea creatures, which are already familiar to us, present mysteries in their migrations and breeding habits, the eels from inland Europe and America, which meet for breeding in the Sargasso Sea, from which only the young reach out reach the places from which their parents set forth. The tuna, which start their migration off the coast of Brazil, travel to Nova Scotia and afterward to Europe, and then some, but only some, continue to the Mediterranean. The spiny lobsters, which march across the sea bottom, down the continental slope, and continue on down to an unknown destination on the abysmal plain. Other mysteries include the great trenches in the oceans, curiously all having approximately the same depth, a staggering 7 miles, and the living creatures that exist on the bottom under such tremendous pressure. Then there are the ocean currents, great rivers in the sea, some of them surface currents, varying in depth, while others flow hundreds of feet below the surface, often in other directions to the surface currents. There is the Cromwell Current in the Pacific Ocean, which some years ago rose to the surface and then subsequently reverted to its subsurface level. So that's saying that the current was going on under the water, and then it came to the surface and came back down. Almost all the currents turn, those in the northern hemisphere clockwise and those in the southern hemisphere counterclockwise. But why is the Bermuda current an exception, as it flows without turning? And then we also have another illustration here that says the world's main ocean currents. Note that currents in the northern hemisphere turn clockwise, while those in the southern hemisphere turn counterclockwise, a feature connected with the rotation of the Earth. And again, just bear with me, this is a book from 74, so. But as far as the currents, I think this is very accurate, although we don't know the ends of the maps here. So if you see up here, this is where the Bermuda Triangle would be. And it does look like it's a vortex. You would think there's stuff that goes on inside all of these different vortices. And there probably is. I just haven't looked into it. Maybe one day. Alright, let's continue. The winds and the waves are further mysteries. The most sudden and violent storms occur in only two places: the hurricanes of the Caribbean Sea in the West Atlantic area and the typhoons in the South China Sea. Sometimes, however, extremely strong waves, called sea waves, appear on an otherwise calm sea. It is believed that these waves come from underwater landslides or earthquakes not noted on the surface or foretold by weather reports. The mineral wealth of the ocean is presently incalculable. Incalculable. Man. Forgive me, everyone. And extraction and exploitation of these mineral deposits, in addition to oil, may considerably affect the financial scene of the future. The protective sea also covers treasures and vestiges of past civilizations. Many of these are evident in the shallow coastal waters of the Mediterranean and the Atlantic continental shelf, but others may lie, for example, more than a mile deep off the coast of Peru, where carved columns have been photographed lying among what may be submerged buildings, indicating a tremendous downward drop of land into the ocean within the area of within the era of civilized man. Stories of sunken civilizations persist in many parts of the world's oceans, from lost Atlantis to the mid-Atlantic, the Bahamas, or the Eastern Mediterranean. The mysteries of Easter Island and other lost civilizations of the South Pacific, to the possibility of a civilization now buried under the Antarctic ice, once having existed in the Antarctic before the poles shifted. parts of the ocean floor seem to be consistently shifting. In May 1973, part of the Bonin Trench near Japan rose 6,000 feet. The majority of the 100,000 earthquakes which take place every year occur along the mid-Atlantic ridge, commonly supposed since ancient times to be the location of legendary Atlantis. Then there is the mystery of the false bottom, frequently revealed by deep-sea soundings, which frequently report a depth much shallower than that previously recorded, and then later give the first reading again. It has been assumed that since this false bottom is the result... excuse me, let me read that. It has been assumed that this false bottom is the result of the temporary presence of banks of fish or other fauna so thick that they present a solid surface from which the sonar bounces off with resultant equivocal information. An equally baffling mystery is the curious, glowing streaks of white water in the Gulf Stream. This is variously thought to be caused by banks of small luminescent fish, marls stirred up by fish, or radioactivity in the water. Whatever it is, it was noteworthy enough to have been commented on by Columbus 5 centuries ago. And it was also the last light from Earth that the astronauts could see on their way to space. Finally, we have the theory of drifting continents, drifting away from each other through the sea from their original position of being clustered together as a supercontinent. This theory is only now being generally accepted and may have considerable bearing on the rotation, composition, and behavior of the Earth itself. And I'm going to share my view here. I don't think you can go that far up into the sky. Especially with everything I've seen, I have yet to see video. A live stream, nonstop, unedited camera shot from the ground up through whatever's up there, including the Van Allen radiation belt, which would probably wipe out the cameras to begin with. So I'll be getting into that stuff at another time, but again, you need to forgive some of this stuff that's in this book. It's from 1974, and a lot of the propaganda was in full swing back then. So I mean, even with the supercontinent theory, it is not clear enough for me to just blindly accept it. All right. But let's continue here. There is a difference, however, between these multiple mysteries which may eventually be solved, and which meanwhile are arguing to contemplate, and the one posed by the Bermuda Triangle, which introduces an element of danger to the traveler. It is true, of course, that numerous planes fly over the triangle every day, that large and small ships sail its waters, and that countless travelers visit the area every year without incident. Besides, ships and planes have been lost at sea and continue to be lost in all the world's seas and oceans for a variety of reasons, and we must remember to differentiate between lost at sea, which suggests the finding of wreckage or some identifiable flotsam, and disappeared, which implies none at all. But in no other area have the unexplained disappearances been so numerous, so well recorded, so sudden, and attended by such unusual circumstances, some of which push the element of coincidence to the borders of impossibility. There are many marine and aeronautical authorities who would observe that it is perfectly natural for planes, ships, or yachts to disappear in an area where there is so much sea and air travel, subject to sudden storms and the multiple possibilities of navigational mistakes and accidents. The same authorities are likely to make the comment that the Bermuda Triangle does not exist at all, and that the very term is a misnomer, a manufactured mystery for the diversion of the curious and imaginative reader. The airlines that service the area encompassed by the Bermuda Triangle concur with this opinion with understandable enthusiasm, although there are many experienced pilots who are not so sure of its non-existence. Those who claim that the triangle does not exist are in one sense correct, for the Bermuda Triangle of unexplained disappearances may not be a true triangle, but actually more of an ellipse, or perhaps a gigantic segment of a circle with the apex near Bermuda, and the curved bottom extending from lower Florida past Puerto Rico, curving south and east through the Sargasso Sea, then back again to Bermuda. Those who have studied the phenomenon are, in general, although not specific, agreement about its location. Ivan Sanderson, who dealt with this subject in Invisible Residence, which I believe that's a book, and numerous articles, concluded that it was really an ellipse or losange, of which there were 12 others spaced at regular intervals throughout the world, including Japan's ill-famed Devil's Sea. John Spencer considers that the danger area follows the continental shelf, starting at a point off Virginia and going south following the American coast past Florida, continuing around the Gulf of Mexico, and including the underwater shelves of the Caribbean islands and the periphery of Bermuda. And again, this is 1974 this book was written. Vincent Gaddis, author of Invisible Horizons, and the article in Argosy magazine, which may well have given the Bermuda Triangle its name, establishes its triangular form roughly within, quote, a line from Florida to Bermuda, another from Bermuda to Puerto Rico, and a third line back to Florida through the Bahamas. While John Godwin, in This Baffling World, suggests that the Hoodoo Sea is a rough square whose limits reach between Bermuda and the Virginia coast, with its southern boundary formed by the islands of Cuba, Hispaniola, and Puerto Rico. Even the United States Coast Guard, which does not believe in the Bermuda Triangle, obligingly identifies its location to those requesting information about it in the form letter file 5720 from the 7th Coast Guard District. It begins as follows. The Bermuda or Devil's Triangle is an imaginary area located off the southeastern Atlantic coast of the United States, which is noted for a high incidence of unexplained losses of ships, small boats, and aircraft. The apexes of the triangle are generally accepted to be Bermuda, Miami, Florida, and San Juan, Puerto Rico. Meteorologists frequently refer to the Devil's Triangle as an area bounded by lines running from Bermuda north to New York and south to the Virgin Islands, billowing fan-wise west to and encompassing 75 degrees WL. And again, I'm not familiar with what the capital letters WL means, so I will have to look that up. A consideration of the map indicating important ship and plane disappearances on page 41 will enable the reader to draw his own conclusions as to the shape of the Bermuda Triangle, whether it is or is not a triangle at all, or perhaps a small triangle within a larger one, a giant ellipse, a square, or a phenomenon paralleling the continental and island shelves. And we'll look at that right now, just so that we have reference. This says the chart of major disappearances of planes and ships in the Bermuda Triangle, with indication of approximate location at time of disappearances, Plane disappearances are indicated by numbers within the circles, and ship disappearances by numbers within triangles. Refer to the page above and following pages for the key to numbers. So they numbered them all. There's about like 19 of them, major ones. But here you can see there's Florida, obviously. Here's the cluster all up in here. It's kind of difficult to see which ones are the triangles and the circles. But as we get through this chapter 2, we'll have a better understanding of that. So we'll be getting back to that map later. Alright, let's continue. It has long been known in maritime circles that many ships have disappeared in this area, and some of the past disappearances may have contributed to the legend of the Sea of Lost Ships, or the ship's graveyard, located in the Sargasso Sea, part of which lies within the triangle. Records concerning disappearing ships may seem to indicate disappearances with increasing frequency since the 1860s, possibly because of more detailed reporting. Disappearances began after the Civil War, thereby ruling out attacks by Confederate raiders. I think that's a very interesting side note there. Disappearances began after the Civil War. But it was some months after World War II that a startling incident occurred, suggesting that planes flying over the area could vanish from the sky for perhaps the same reason that ships had been vanishing from the sea. This was the incident that gave the Bermuda Triangle its name. And that is chapter 1. So we'll be getting more into this as the weeks go on. There's a lot of really cool pictures and diagrams in here, photographs, lithographs. And I figured this was related to my other deep dive series that I'm currently doing, and I'll be wrapping up in the next few weeks on Coral Castle south of Miami. And the Bermuda Triangle is one of the points is based in Miami. So I thought this was a nice segue going into that. And I want to read through this entire book here. There's, let's see how many chapters there are. There's 9 chapters. It's about 180 pages. So it's about the same length as the Coral Castle book, but it is just, it's a little smaller text here. But yeah. So I think that's going to do it for today. I had to read that chapter twice because the first time, which I thought I was live, I was not live. So I read an entire chapter to myself. So next time, we'll be covering chapter 2. I'll just show right here. We got like 20 pages in. And yeah, if you have any questions or comments, leave them below the video here. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. You can find all my other links in the description below. And yeah, just really appreciate you guys all being here. I know a lot of you watch this after the lives, but if you do want to catch me live next week, Tuesday at 2 o'clock, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. I will be continuing my deep dive series on Edleed Skolnish and his Coral Castle. I do have pamphlets that we will be reading over, some of his personal work. And then next Thursday, we will be continuing our reading of The Bermuda Triangle by Charles Berlitz. And this content is going to be opening up me discussing other topics on this channel. And I actually do have a lot of maritime books as well. I picked up in Milwaukee a few years ago. And I do want to cover that stuff too. And just give me a second, because I do want to show you a film book that I want to also do a deep dive on. So just give me one moment here. I'll be right back. Oh man, I actually have so many books about the film industry and Chicago. I don't know where to start on them. But one is When Hollywood Had a King. Yeah, and this covers the Midwest U.S. And maybe for another show, the Rockefeller Syndrome. And I also have World's Fair books. There's another book called Flickering Empire, which is also about Chicago filmmaking, preluding Hollywood. But there's a lot of great topics I'd like to get into here, and I can only go one at a time. But once I get started on those film industry books about Chicago, then we're really going to be flying on here. But like I said, I don't want to do too many topics at once, so my intention is to first finish up all the Coral Castle stuff. That'll be happening over the next 3 to 4 weeks. I think I'll be able to finish it up in 3 weeks. And because I mean, I don't want to do 3-4 hour shows and keep the parts down to like less parts. An hour and a half is usually a good amount of time to get you guys in, we get comfortable, we start talking about this stuff, and then it's early enough for us to not just check out entirely after sitting here for 3 hours. But I'm going to be finishing up the Coral Castle stuff, and in the meantime, we'll be getting further into the Bermuda Triangle, and the Bermuda Triangle topic will also open up the door to other stuff after that. I do have books on human encounters with different either physical beings or interdimensional beings, so I really am looking forward to talking about all that. And other than that, it's a Thursday, but what else am I to say? But thank you for being here. I appreciate y'all following me along on my journey. I do intend to talk about the Matrix again, so don't forget about that. That'll be coming up soon. If not this month, definitely next month. Yeah, if you guys are out there, leave a comment because I'm trying to interact with all you here. But I've just finished reading chapter 1. But we've only been live 44 minutes. See, chapter 2 of this Bermuda Triangle book goes from page 21 to 40. And, I mean, I could sit here right now and read it, but I don't want to make these too long. That's all I want to say. I do see a few of you are watching, though, so I appreciate it. But yeah, one of my takeaways from this chapter 1 that we just read is that disappearing ships didn't really get reported in the Bermuda Triangle until after the American Civil War. So I thought that was a very interesting side note on that. Okay, I'm going to get going. Thank y'all for being here today. We'll jump into chapter 2 next week. So just remember, Tuesday's Coral Castle, Thursday's Bermuda Triangle. I appreciate y'all being here. And until the next one, class dismissed.